the Spirit of God is, there is life. You can never succeed in plotting evil, in digging a pit for someone who has been called and chosen by God. Because it is either you convert and follow the same God, or you dig it and fall in it yourself. The word of God tells us they dug a pit for me, but they fell in it themselves. You can also be converted by God. God sometimes can use bad things to change people's lives. For to those who love God, everything turns out for their good because of the purpose for which they have been called, they have been chosen. Look at Saul seeking to kill David, running after him because the Spirit of God had departed from Saul. Remember, if the Spirit of God departs from you, you are lifeless. It's just a body moving. There's nothing. And that's why St. Augustine says, our hearts are restless until they rest in you, God. Your heart, my heart is restless until we rest in God. We can only be contented. We can only be filled if our lives are full of God's Spirit. If God is in us. I want to remind you today, there's nothing that can cover the gap that is, or that vacuum that is within us if God is not with us. You can do so many things. You can be prosperous. You can have wealth. You can have material. You can have everything that you want. But if you lack God in you, I want to tell you today, you do not have life. There's no life in you. You are a walking corpse. I want to tell you the truth. If God is not in your life, there's nothing left. You're just walking because God is life in us. His Spirit gives us life. And that is why we see when the Spirit of God used to leave Saul, jealousy used to fill him up and he used to be filled with the evil spirit. That is why he's running after David to kill him. David, who is so innocent. And now we see him following him and sending his men when David escaped because he was informed by his wife that he would be killed that night. And David sent his men to go and kill David. But when they went, they met Samuel and David and other people prophesying. And we are told that the word of God says the Spirit of God filled them, these men who had been sent to kill David. And they also started to prophesy. Can you imagine that? You will go with bad intention, but God changes that intention for a good reason, for a good purpose. He sent another team and it happened the same. He sent another team and the same thing happened. And so we are told that Saul was left by himself because he sent all the men to go and kill David. But they went and the Spirit of God filled them and changed them. And they also joined the men who were prophesying and they started to prophesy. But one thing is that Saul also decided to go by himself so that he would do away with David. But when he went, the Spirit of God also filled him and he also started to prophesy. He started prophesying. And the word of God says, this is why people say, a soul also among the prophets. You can just imagine the man who was full of jealousy sending all his army to go and do away with another innocent man. At long last, he's also filled with the Spirit of God once again and he starts prophesying. My dear brothers and sisters, we should always look for the Spirit of God. We should always ask God for His Spirit, that God Himself should fill our lives, because otherwise we seek out to kill others for no good reason. We start plotting against others. We start gossiping others for no reason. We start doing all kinds of evil things because there's nothing in us that indicates that there's good in those people whom we want to kill, in those people whom we are plotting against, in those people whom we are digging pits. But we also see that God can change our evil intentions for something good, for something great, for His own purposes. Let us learn today from this story, from the Word of God, that God can change out anything for good, for your purpose, for your good purpose, for His honor and for His glory. And above all, let us learn to have God in our lives, because God is the life within us, that His Spirit remains in us. Because once the Spirit of God departs from us, we have nothing. We are nothing. We are left with nothing. Can you sing the sequencer? Bila nguvu yako wewe, mwanadamu ana kitu, kwake yote yanakosa. Without God's strength in us, without His presence, we have nothing in us, and everything in us is like a mistake, is sinful. There's nothing good. Let us ask God to give us His Spirit and sustain His Spirit in us and remain with us, so that we can always look out and do the right thing.